The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. What does it mean to create movement that lasts a lifetime, work that outlives trends, resonates across genres, and moves audiences for generations? Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio for a special mid-month episode where we'll get a peek into the mind of world-renowned choreographer Lar Lubovitch. For more than 6 decades, Lar has shaped the landscape of dance with works that are both technically masterful and deeply human, or honest, as he describes them in this interview. His own company, Lar Lubovitch Dance Company, founded in 1968, has created more than 120 works performed in more than 40 countries. Lar says that from the moment he started dancing, he knew he would be a choreographer. But dance is a journey he began relatively late at 19. He spoke with me about the freedom his later start in dance gave him to experiment, mix styles, and create work that bridges the divide between ballet and modern dance. All of this propelled him into success as a groundbreaking choreographer. It's a joy to hear him talk about dance. He discusses the intersections of his background as a painter and sculptor with his choreography, which he views similarly in brushstrokes and shapes that illustrate the music. He shares that the initial spark of joy seeing dancers move on stage that inspired him to explore dance in the first place is still inspiring him today. And he talks about how now at 82, he sees himself as an adult dancer engaging with the art form differently as he ages. This was particularly inspiring to me because it demonstrates that the concept of engaging with dance into older adulthood, whatever that looks like, can have an impact across the whole landscape of ballet, from community studios to large stages. In this conversation, we talk not only about his work with his own company and other renowned ballet companies, but also his work on Broadway and in the field of ice dancing. He also shares the vision behind his new program, Art of the Solo, where his solo works are brought to life by a cast of dancers as part of the Guggenheim's Works and Process series in New York. Tickets are on sale now for the show on Sunday, September 7th, and a link is in this episode's show notes for listeners who are interested. I hope you find this conversation as inspiring as I did, and I'm excited to share it with you. I saw American Repertory Ballet's performance of your piece, Something About Night, last year, and I thought it was so gorgeous. And there was actually a pre-show reception, and everyone was raving about how much they love your work, myself included. Honored to have you on the podcast and looking forward to the conversation. And I know that you have a career that spans more than 6 decades, and you've spoken about how you've always been creative, first studying art and gymnastics before discovering your love of dance. So could you talk about that first? And was there a specific moment where you knew dance was going to be your life's work?
Well, it actually happened when I was in college at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. I went there as an art major. I'd been drawing and painting from before I could hold a pencil. But I also had been dancing all those years, but only as something I did as a kind of a unique hobby. I was known as the dancer. I didn't know the dance profession existed or that other people even did it. But when I went to college as an art major and a gymnastics minor, by the way, I saw a dance company for the first time, and I realized it was the 2 things I did best and loved most put together, art and gymnastics. And I was sort of thunderstruck in a kind of a corny way, and it was kind of a light bulb moment where I knew that that was going to be what I should be doing.
I love that. That's such a cool story because it combined 2 of your passions into one thing. What was the moment that sort of drew you to choreography in particular?
Actually, it occurred to me even at that moment that I was meant to be a choreographer because I had been making art for all my life and sculpting, and it looked to me like a way of sculpting, but over time with bodies rather than simply in plastic space. I saw the Jose Limon Company was the first thing that I ever saw, and it was a highly regarded, top modern dance company of its time. So I had the good fortune to begin on a very high note, seeing what dance really was. So it struck me immediately that choreography was what I wanted to do, but I realized I had to be a dancer for a few years first.
My husband's an artist as well, so I love the way that I've read previous interviews with you, and I love the way you talk about dance as sort of sculpture or visual art in that way, because they're really so interlinked. And I'm curious if there's anything from the creative process of studying these other art forms, painting, gymnastics, that you carried over to your dancing and your choreography.
When I'm doing a dance, when I have a piece of music and I guess the bottom line is I'm depicting the music in space, and I really feel that I'm painting the music, that I'm painting a picture of the music, but painting over time and space rather than, as I said, in one moment or in a plastic way. And I feel like I use my painting background for doing that, for regarding the space and where the strokes go and where the movement has to go next to complete filling the whole canvas.
I know that you founded the Lar Lubovitch Dance Company in 1968. What was your vision for the company back then, and how has that sort of evolved over time?
Uh, it was really because I needed a place to work as choreographer. In 1968, there weren't that many dance companies, and the dance world had not been fully fledged from being kind of an underground form. It was in around 1968 when I gave my first concert that the National Endowment of the Arts was brought into the scene. And because of that, dance had a new flourishing. Now, looking back, people refer to it as the dance boom. Had everything to do with the government suddenly infusing money into the arts by giving universities stipends for hiring dance companies. But when I started, there was no such world of dance to participate in, and I needed a place to make dances. So, with just a few friends, I put together a company and put on my first concert.
And it blossomed into this whole incredible career, and I know that now on September 7th, you're presenting Art of the Solo at the Guggenheim as part of Works in Process. So what drew you to explore the solo form in particular for this?
Well, the Guggenheim Works in Process program is going on for some time, and it's you're probably familiar with it. And for those who aren't, it's an insider look into dancers and dance making, where the audience gets to see the nuts and bolts of how it happens. Dancers speak about their work. Um, they demonstrate their work. Questions are taken about it. It's a wonderful event because the dancing is always exciting and top quality. And the information is right from the front lines of dance. So they've been doing this for some time. And a year and a half ago, I presented a program called Art of the Duet, which I presented a number of my own duets that I'd done over the years. And having done that, they asked me to return to explore the art of the solo because I've done quite a few solos. And so that's the sort of derivation of the program. And the program is meant to be an insider look at the creation of and performing of solo dances.
It is a great program, and I know that you're working with an incredible cast for this. You have dancers from Hubbard Street, from New York City Ballet, Alvin Ailey. So what has it been like to work with this cast, and what sort of unique qualities do they bring to these solos?
Well, these are all dancers that I've worked with quite a bit, known for many years. One of the dancers from the Alvin Ailey Company was a student of mine since he was 17 years old.
Oh, wow.
And subsequently, he worked at Juilliard, but through Juilliard, I worked with him there. At some point, he became a member of my company, and now he's a member of the Alvin Ailey Company. So he's presenting two solos, and he's really a dancer whom I've trained quite a bit over the years. Two of the other Ailey dancers are featured in my recent piece for the Ailey Company called Many Angels. And I've been doing solos and duet work with Adrian Dancer-Guerin from New York City Ballet for several years, just on a personal basis. He's a person who has a searching character and wants to do more than just the New York City Ballet ideas, rich and fantastic as they are. So he asked me to see if we could invest in some duets and solos. So one of the solos is a piece I made for him called Desire, and he'll be performing that.
I know you mentioned you previously, a couple of years ago, did this program with the Art of the Duet, and you've spoken about how in a duet, one's right to be free only sort of goes as far as it doesn't impinge on the freedom of the other. And I'm
Exactly.
curious if your creative approach with solo work sort of differs from your approach to duets, and is there more freedom in the solo in this way, or does it have its own restrictions?
Well, it goes both ways. the limitations in creating a solo is that you only have two arms and two legs and a single torso. If you have a duet, you have double that amount, two torsos, four arms, four legs. Immediately, the options are expanded. And so inventing for the solo body has to be very carefully done, and it has to take into consideration that particular solo body that's in front of you and finding out how they dance and what suits their technique and their particular character. But solo is very different in the sense of to whom it's being performed. The Greek theater, who sort of invented and defined theater centuries ago, had a definition of two types of solos. Uh, it was either monologue or soliloquy. And a monologue was defined a speech given by a person alone to the other actors on the stage. But a soliloquy is defined as a single person giving speech alone to the audience, revealing his inner thoughts. So when we're speaking of a solo, we're speaking of addressing the audience and revealing something intimate, something of the inner nature of the character and the message. When people are doing a duet together, they're not speaking to the audience, they're speaking to each other, and the audience is allowed to glimpse it. Maybe you've heard the term the fourth wall in theater, and this is something that is used to indicate that though the audience is looking, that the performers are working within a contained space. They have to imagine a fourth wall without an audience. They can contain their intention, contain their energy, contain their focus to the purpose of communicating with each other. But the fourth wall is removed for solos. And the communication is directly to the audience.
That's an interesting way to think about it. And I love the way that your work seems to be infused with so many different styles of art. We talked about painting. I want to talk in a moment about your work in theater and ice dancing as well. But just going back to painting for a moment, I know that you've referenced Picasso saying that he would begin by painting a shape, drawing a line, and then have to solve the problem it presents. Is this how you approach choreography as well? Is there some planning and some improvisation? How do you balance those two?
Well, I like that analogy, and I have used that analogy that Picasso started painting by doing any arbitrary stroke on canvas, and then the painting was the result of solving the problem that that stroke created. And I kind of started dance that way also. I I don't pre-choreograph. I wait until I'm in the studio with the dancer, and I usually start by doing anything, any series of movements, totally arbitrary, because until there's something in front of you, there's nothing to respond to. So I have to put something in front of my eyes so that I can bounce off of it. It can be completely wrong, but at least I have something to react to, something to trigger my imagination. So I guess I do start like Picasso by doing an arbitrary stroke and then seeing if I can solve the problem it created.
That's really interesting to me as well as a journalist because it's the same for me with writing is the blank page is really scary, but if I can just get something on it, anything, it makes it infinitely easier to kind of construct
It
a piece.
does. I'm glad you related. I think in writing is the same. Sometimes I'm called upon to write something I really, really don't like to do. But I have to do it. I have to sort of write anything just like that and then just see what I can do with it, see where it takes me.
I know that you've also spoken about how you've drawn inspiration from Balanchine, and you've spoken about how he's taught us to see music. I'm curious how you've taken inspiration from that concept and used it to find your own choreographic style.
Well, I think it's not only that he taught us to see music, but that he was the first choreographer whose intention was to show music. Dancing came out of an 18th, 19th century tradition of fantasy and peasants and princesses and women who were turned into magic birds, and all of this was about sort of storytelling. But Balanchine removed the story, the literal story, and made it the story of the music instead. And to do that, he had to find a way to allow us to see the music. So really, he invented the idea of using dance to see music. And I think that influenced virtually everybody, certainly influenced me since I'd come from a painter sculpting background. I was already finding a way to see music just by the nature of what I brought to it. So seeing what Balanchine was doing and how he revealed and spelled the music, instructed me in the way to go about that physically.
I love that because he does, and many choreographers like you as well, sort of take a moment and stretch it out and tell a whole story within it using the music and the movement. And I know, as we said earlier, you've choreographed not only for your own company, major ballet ensembles, but also for Broadway and Olympic ice skaters. And
Mhm.
you made your Broadway debut with the musical staging for Into the Woods and earned a Tony nomination. So, what did it feel like to transition from the concert dance world into musical theater, especially on such an iconic and groundbreaking project?
It is a very different world of art making. The parameters are very different. Um, One enormous difference is that in dance, working in a nonprofit world, so the idea of it actually making money is not even a consideration. It never does. But when you work on Broadway, which is commercial theater, there are producers behind it, and their intention is to make a great deal of money. So it changes the tone and taste and regard of what's going to be happening on stage because it's meant to be for an audience's pleasure. Not that dance isn't, it is also, but that is the next stage in dance, not the creative stage in dance. But on Broadway, we're really working on a commercial product. Setting that aside, um, my role as a choreographer on Broadway, or any role for choreographer on Broadway, is not to execute their own vision, but to go in the mind of a director and make a dance the director could make if he could make a dance, because it's the director's vision that rules the show. And they often don't know how to conduct themselves in movement. Directors I've worked with usually hand it over to the choreographer when they have to move more than two people at once. So in musical theater, there's a great deal of staging going on, which is actually being done by the choreographer under the director's watchful eye. But using your imagination to go in someone else's mind and create as they would create is a very different place to draw from than drawing from one's own mind entirely.
That is really interesting because it's so collaborative. You're sort of drawing inspiration from each other and kind of filling in limitations for each other as well. And, Into the Woods is one of my favorite shows.
It's a great show. It's such an honor to be a part of it.
And you also staged the Red Shoes and contributed to The King and I. And you've also choreographed for Olympic ice skaters like Peggy Fleming and Dorothy Hamill. So, how did all of that kind of challenge or expand your creative process, or what did it teach you?
Well, I was brought into the skating world actually by John Curry, who was a British skater. He was the Olympic gold medal skater in 1976, so it was some time ago. And he was a very artistic skater. And he and other skaters in that moment were trying to elevate ice skating to a higher artistic form. And so he sought out choreographers, dance choreographers, to create pieces for him, rather than the coaches who were the creators of the Olympic or any exhibition ice skating. And so he saw my work and asked me to create for him, and that was my entree to the skating world. And he created a ice dance company, which performed in theaters rather than in ice skating arenas, where they freeze stages on Broadway theaters. One of the great programs he did, they actually froze the stage of the Metropolitan Opera in New York City
Oh, how cool.
and did an entire ice dance program on it with pieces choreographed by me, by other choreographers at that time, Elliot Feld, Peter Martins, Laura Dean, Twyla Tharp.
Wow.
And it was a huge jump forward for the ice skating world into more artistic matters. It suited me just fine because I came from an athletic background as a gymnast. I also been an ice skater. So I felt very at home in that genre.
That was one of my questions for you, was if there were any sort of learning challenges having that be your entry into ice skating. But it sounds like, with your background, all of your skills sort of transferred.
Well, it is very physically, it's a very rigid world also.
Yeah.
Um, there are certain physical requirements that you simply can't get around. Like a skater has to keep momentum going or they slow down and stop. So they have to keep stroking on the ice to keep momentum going. In addition, they have to move only in curves almost all the time because the ice runs out of ice if they go in a straight line. So you have to always figure curves into what they're doing so they don't run out of ice. And you have to consider the fact that in order to keep momentum going, they have to keep treading their feet. They have to keep moving. Um, in addition, time is very different than ice skating. A single step in dance can last one or two notes of music. In ice skating, a single step of ice skating could take up a whole bar of music or a whole 30 seconds of music, because for them to get into the shape, make the curve, hold the pose, a great deal of music has gone by. So the way time is applied is very different.
Yeah, what an interesting and sort of fun challenge I can imagine as a choreographer to create for that environment.
It is, and in both instances of working Broadway theater or working ice skating, is a great opportunity to challenge my imagination to do things I hadn't yet done and expand my own experience as a maker, as an art maker.
Yeah, which I imagine is a huge key to the artistic process. And if I can pick your brain for a moment, this podcast is the Adult Ballet Studio, and a lot of our listeners are adult ballet dancers who either, returned to dance or began later in life. And I know that you had a sort of later start yourself studying dance at Juilliard at 19. So I was curious what advice you would give to our listeners who are coming back to it or starting for the first time later.
I still have to keep myself in some sort of workable condition. I'm 82 years old, and my body is not going to be able to do most of the things it used to do. So I have to also treat myself as an adult dancer who doesn't dance, who doesn't perform, but needs to be in some sort of it's about safety, really. It's about keeping myself safe. And I think when you're working with the adult body, I think safety is a very important consideration, that people should not go beyond their capacity at that moment. And capacity changes, capacity enlarges. You always have to treat the body and what it tells you with respect, and listen to what it needs, and adhere to it. Um, it's something you have to love to do. Otherwise, it's much too hard uh, and much too painful to do. Anybody who dances, young or old, is going to have to experience some amount of physical discomfort slash pain, and that comes with the territory. You have to also have what we call pain tolerance, and accept that that's a part of it. If you love it enough, your love of it has to be greater than the pain it gives you.
I'm also curious if having a sort of later start, did that shape your experience of the art form in any sort of unique way as someone who started earlier?
I think it was a great advantage, actually, because I had no knowledge that I was stuck with. Everything I was learning was brand new in the moment, and so I sort of built an understanding of dance from a newborn place. Um, People had danced for many years by the time I came to the dance world, knew a lot of things, and had certain set minds about what it does and doesn't do. I had no such limitation. I was free to do anything because I didn't know what one actually does.
That's a great gift to have that mindset, and you can see it in your choreography and in all of your work. I know that you've, also talked about sort of straddling a few different genres at once. You have taken the vocabulary of ballet and other movement languages and created a language of your own. And I'm curious if you see this element of your work as helping to open up dance as an art form and kind of make it more widely accessible because it reaches across genres and audiences.
I don't know that I have much information about what it's done in that sense or what effect it might have had. I've been doing it for a very long time. I guess it's been seen by a lot of people, and I guess I've had my influence within the dance world. Um, my focus is on making the dances and doing them as freely and as honestly as I can, and then whatever effect is taking place will kind of have to take care of itself. It's nice to believe that you've had some sort of positive influence on the world you've joined, and I hope that that is so. Combining genres was the other part of your question, and I think that was also related back to starting dance late. That I had no prejudices or no hierarchical ideas about what dance form was of a higher nature or lower nature. I started dance very, very late. I was 19. By the time I got to New York, I was almost 20. And I made up a dance, though I had never danced before. And I auditioned for the Juilliard School, and I was taken in. And the day I started at Juilliard, I did ballet class, I did modern class, I did jazz class. Then the same week, I did ethnic dance, and so to me, it was all just one big language of dance. I didn't see the difference between them. They felt differently, they moved differently, but they all made sense to me. So by the time I got to making dances, it was easy to put them all together.
I love that. And it goes back to what you said about starting at 19 and sort of having no limitations in that way because you could conceptualize anything without any preconceived notions of what dance should be.
Yeah, actually, when I began dancing, there was a raging war between so-called modern dance and classical ballet. I didn't know that. Found out later that in ballet it was understood if you did attempt modern dance, it would ruin your classical technique. If you were a modern dance devotee, and at that time it was only Martha Graham or Jose Limon, those were the two major techniques. That if you studied ballet, it would ruin your modern technique, and so those lines weren't crossed. And I think by accident, if I'm to be credited with anything, it's having crossed those lines with no regard and putting those languages together without prejudice.
And you do such incredible work in that way. And I know you spoke for the earlier part of my question about, you're just here to make work and anything else that happens because of it, any ripple effects is kind of out of your hands. But I can say that, obviously you've had such a positive impact on the field. Everyone I talk to knows and loves your work. I also know that recently you've been engaging in sort of documenting your career with some interviews for the New York Public Library and archives and different writings. So what does legacy, or I guess your legacy or the legacy of your work mean to you now, kind of reflecting on your career?
Well, I hadn't taken legacy too seriously. I hadn't given much thought until recently, like the last couple of years. And it was actually the Library of Performing Arts that came to me to suggest that building an archive was necessary and that it was well nigh time. And so I have done like 8 hours of interviews for the Library of Performing Arts over a series of interviews. And we've been downloading all of our work to the most contemporary um, technical um, style so that it exists. But I hadn't given much thought to legacy. And in the same way that I'm not sure that I can imagine what effect I'm having as I do my work, I'm not sure that I can imagine what this legacy might be or if there is one. It's the kind of thing that will have to take care of itself, I'm afraid.
Throughout this conversation, we've spoken a lot about your different inspirations and influences and the way that you seek to inspire through your work. After more than 60 years of creating, performing, teaching, what continues to inspire you every day?
In the world in which I function, it's dancers, really. I've never lost my enthusiasm and my excitement, absolute thrill of watching a great dancer dance. Uh, and if I can make a dance, one of the reasons for making it is to see a dancer dance. And I've had the good fortune to work with amazing dancers all of my career, and they've inspired me to make dances. And one part of it is just a chance to see them dance. So I'm in an audience and I see a great dancer dancing. I have the same excitement I had the day I discovered dance.
Yeah, there's really nothing like it and being at a live show and having that connection with the dancers on stage. We have one section on the podcast. It's called Petite Allegro. It's just kind of some fun, quick questions if you're okay with doing that too.
Okay.
I always like to ask, what's one thing that you always have to have in your dance bag at every rehearsal?
A banana.
Nutrition, that's always important.
I, my engine burns very hot and very fast, and I need to snack all day long when I'm choreographing.
Yeah.
Bananas are one of my go-to foods. Nuts are very good. I try to stay from hard sugar, but if I get desperate, I'll use it.
You're expending a lot of energy, so that makes sense. And if you could use one word to describe your choreographic voice, what would it be?
Honest.
Honest. I love that. That's very true of all the work of yours that I've seen. Is there a favorite city that you've toured with your company so far?
Of course, it's everyone's sine qua non to dance in New York. New York is considered the dance basket of the world, really. And it is wonderful to to dance in New York. There are great audiences in some cities that are kind of unparalleled. Um, the obvious choices: Paris has an amazing dance audience. Tokyo has an amazing dance audience. Los Angeles has an amazing dance audience. And there's some smaller cities, but there are certain cities that are very tuned into dance, and of course those are the most fun places to perform.
What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing what you know now about creativity in dance?
Um, Fear is only an energy, and like other forms of energy, it has no voice that you need to or should believe in.
I've heard that concept with stage fright. That's a great answer. And then the last question I always like to ask everybody who comes on is, in a perfect world, what would the dance industry look like?
That's let me.
A big question to end on.
I think it would look just the way it looks. It's 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 a it's a it's an art that represents struggle and challenge, and it shows those who participate in it as a section of humanity that demonstrate to others how challenges are met and how diversity and how how to survive the times that are not supportive and thrive in the times that are. I think dance is very real. I think it's symbolic of life, and I think in a world of struggle and diversity, which will always be, um, exemplifying that, demonstrating it is probably the way the dance should look.
I love that answer. It's so beautiful and it's so indicative of the work that you create. It comes through in all of your choreography. And it goes back to the advice that you shared that fear is only an energy that can fuel us. So thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I've learned so much from you. I'm sure our listeners will too. And just my last question is, how can people find out more information about Art of the Solo on September 7th or purchase tickets if they're interested?
I believe they go to a website if they put Works and Process website, or they can probably go right to the Guggenheim Museum website. And I'm sure there will be a reference to the Works and Process series in the beautiful theater at the Guggenheim Museum. Uh, Museum, of course, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, and a very beautiful, very unusual uh, theater, which is in itself a work of art. Just the theater alone is worth visiting to see what Frank Lloyd Wright did in his imagination to make a theater. But I believe you can find the information on either the Guggenheim website or the Works in Process website.
It is a gorgeous theater. It'll be a wonderful show. So I hope our listeners will check it out. And I'll include links in the show notes as well. And Lar, thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with me. It's been great to talk to you.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
I love talking to Lar and learn so much from him. The way he talks about dance is so beautiful and inspiring, and you can feel his passion for it. It's a passion that translates into his choreography and everything that he makes. I hope you enjoyed hearing from him. And once again, tickets to Works and Process presents Lar Lubovitch Art of the Solo on Sunday, September 7th at Guggenheim, New York in the Peter B. Lewis Theater are on sale, and the ticket link is in the show description. Thanks to Lar for taking the time to speak with me and to everyone who tuned in. We have another episode with another great guest publishing on September 2nd. And as always, feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments or to suggest a guest at eBlastfield on social media or at Adult Ballet Studio on YouTube. Or you can send me an email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com. Happy dancing, everybody, and see you at the bar.